Welcome to the world's first real battle royale! You think you're tough? Sign up. Come on down to the aisle. Come test yourself for real.
All right, picture this. You're deep in the battle royale. You just scored an epic sniper shot, and instead of just bragging rights or having bragging rights, that digital skin, you're rocking it. You actually own it. And guess what? You can trade it, you can sell it, and you can flex it. Yeah, for real. That's where gaming's headed. Or is it?
Well, that's the billion-dollar question. Everyone keeps saying Web3 is the future of gaming, but let's be real. Most gamers still have no idea what that actually means. So today, we're diving deep into the future of gaming, onboarding the next billion users, and whether or not Web3 gaming is actually ready to take over.
And who better to guide us through this digital battleground than today's guest? He's at the forefront of Web3 gaming, directing the charge of Gunzilla Games. Please welcome Theo.
Hey guys, thanks for having me here. As a
Hey,
fellow
Theo.
dad in crypto, excited to be on the show.
Fantastic.
Welcome,
We love
Crypto
having dads
Dad.
on the show.
Yeah,
So
most
welcome to Dad's Gone Crypto. You've got one of the coolest jobs in gaming right now. You're the director of Web3 at Gunzilla Games. But can you tell us what exactly does that role entail, and how did you land in this wild world of crypto gaming?
Well, I gotta go back a couple years and carbon date myself here a little bit. I used to play on the Commodore 64, Pirates and Oil of Empires and whatnot. So I was an avid gamer for, decades. And subsequently to that, I got into, building businesses and being a tech entrepreneur since 1998. Found crypto in 2012, kind of had my mind blown with what the potential is. Ended up, linking up with Gunzilla Games in 2021 and was absolutely blown away by what the technology, what blockchain technology specifically can do in revolutionizing Web2 gaming, and of course also, what Gunzilla can do in terms of revolutionizing Web3 gaming. And in terms of my day-to-day role, it's really anything that touches, blockchain technology, anything that touches asset ownership, anything that touches, incentivizations and economies, partnerships with other projects. It really spans the gamut of our interaction points with our Web3 and our Web2 audiences, and how to bridge the gaps, how to explain that this is not a threatening technology, how to explain that it's really not about labels. It's not about, is it Web2, is it Web1, is it Web3, is it Web33? It's really just about the user and what are the best technologies that you can bring to the table, or that Gunzilla can bring to the table, to make it a better user experience. Ultimately, that's really what it's about. I usually like telling people a little, example, and that is, nobody ever walks across Times Square, looks at the pavement and says, I wonder what fiber optic cable runs under there and how fast it is, right? Yet in Web3 or in technology in general, people pound their chest and say, oh, it's 150,000 TPS and it's near instant finality and da 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 da. None of that matters.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the only thing that matters is the user experience. And that's one of the things that Gunzilla is absolutely excelling at, and that is, let's abstract everything away. Let's only focus on what is the best possible user experience that we can give. And blockchain technology happens to be the best technology to convey asset ownership, to convey verifiability, to allow people transparently to verify that the claims that the company is making are actually true.
All right, Theo. So, from classic games to the evolution of this space, and where gaming's actually going, you've alluded to some of the crypto, how crypto plays a role in this. Is it just a buzzword, or is it the next evolution of gaming?
So I believe in the future we will refer to all of these things simply as gaming, because it doesn't
Okay.
really matter what moniker you add. What matters is that people, when they spend, especially when they spend their own hard-earned cash, deserve to own the assets that they purchased. I have, as a dad in crypto, I have my own story in that, which is when my boys were a little bit younger and loved playing Fortnite, and our whole family would load in together as a squad. They spend a couple $1,000s of their own hard-earned cash on Fortnite skins. They wanted V-Bucks for their birthday, and they started valuing digital skins more so than even their own street clothes. And it was the whole, like, in high school, popularity depended oftentimes on how good you were in Fortnite and what rare skin from whatever battle pass you might have owned. And after a couple of years, inevitably they stopped being interested in Fortnite. They moved on to some other games, and they came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, so how do I get my money back?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, like, well, I spent my money. I own these things. I want to sell them. I want to get my money back. So we started getting into what a EULA is and how companies really just loan you the things that you're purchasing. But they couldn't believe it. They were blown away by the fact that they actually didn't that they didn't own anything, right? That it was all owned by someone else. And so just that simple problem in and of itself, I think, is a very, very worthy one to solve. And of course, Gunzilla solves a bunch of other ones as well. But at the core of it, what excites me is the fact that you give power back to the user. You give ownership back to the user, that hard-earned cash is not locked up and lost, whether the person wants to move on from the game or whether the person has two or three things that they're not interested in anymore, that they want to just trade for something else, whether they simply want to share a skin with a friend of theirs that they load into a squad. My son had the Black Knight end of season 2 skin, and he was like, "Hey, I want my friend to experience how it feels running around in this skin." Can't do that, right? Blockchain technology allows you to solve all of these problems. So that's one of the things that I'm very, very excited about.
Yeah, that's amazing. So Web3 gaming, has the potential to be absolutely amazing. But the truth is right now, it's got some massive hurdles. Gamers aren't exactly lining up and, jumping into blockchain games. So from your perspective, what's holding Web3 gaming back right now?
Well, as I mentioned before, there's a big problem, I believe, in Web3 gaming that people focus too much on the technology. People focus too much on, oh, it's this fast and it's this and it's that, when in fact it should all be about the gamer and the gamer experience. So that's one aspect. Two, oftentimes I believe, there's a lot of soul searching going on right now in Web3 gaming, I think, where people realize that the 2021 way of, the early Web3 games doesn't really work anymore, isn't really effective. Like you can't force people to set up a wallet in order to play something, let alone buy something, buy an NFT that gates the game. It's really not what gamers would ever find acceptable. It kind of became a little bit acceptable as I would call it gamified staking, right? That really was happening in Web3, where, investors in essence were playing these games or speculators were playing these games. They didn't really care. Well, I purchased this, I make this much return, but that's not gaming, right? I called it gamified staking. And so that's where I think the industry needs to really mature and abstract the way the wallet's set up. Stop focusing on the money component, make it really about the gamer experience, and anything else after that is kind of icing on the cake, but it shouldn't be the main thing. The main thing in gaming always has to be, well, guess what? The gaming itself, right?
Okay.
As the name implies. So I think that's what's currently kind of still lacking in the industry, but I see more and more projects, after seeing what doesn't work, actually moving towards what does. And, very, very proud to say that kind of Gunzilla is leading the charge in that and making people reevaluate things after they've seen the, phenomenal results that we've been able to achieve since last October with regards to wallet count, transactions per day, total transactions, and, reevaluating their kind of plans around how Web3 should be implemented into their games and realizing that it is ultimately all about the game experience. So I personally see more and more kind of promising examples of people building and focusing on the gamer.
Absolutely.
So, Theo, I love the idea of owning my asset. Often when you go on these epic battles and epic quests, and then you get something that's so unique and rare, and it's like, yes, it's flexing and it's bragging rights, but at the same time, I could possibly trade it. But the frustrating part is that I do not want to take 10 steps to figure it out, to try to give it to someone, to wait. There's a lot of hurdles that stop us from doing that. I'm like, okay, I've got it. Let me just use it. I don't care about anything else, right? But let's take the scalability part, and a hot topic is, how do you onboard the next billion gamers, right, into that Web3? Is it purely based on just playing the game and then the marketplace is an extra, or is it kind of like you got to solve these integral parts? Because obviously the marketplace is where the money's made, and the money's the V bucks and the Robux. That's why these guys can continue to do what they do. So obviously it's a main feature, but how do you onboard that next billion gamer?
Sure. So as always, there's several components to this. On one end, you have the technology, and how do you abstract the technology away to make it completely seamless and transparent?
Yeah.
and really optional. And when I say make the technology optional, a lot of people give me a hard time saying, well, but you're still interacting with it. Well, it's not about making the technology optional, it's about making the direct interaction with the technology optional. So that's part one. Part two is make it really, really, really easy at the points that matter to the user to explain the additional technology and why they might want to interact with the technology directly. So what do I mean by that? Number one, we are, of course, as you guys know, the first ever blockchain-enabled game that launched on Xbox and PlayStation in addition to PC. And through the GeForce Now program, we're also now accessible through mobile phones, iPads, Macintosh computers, and even TVs. So we got that part. The next step is to make sure that the onboarding process is very, very seamless. So when a user downloads our game on PlayStation, they don't need to set up a wallet. They do not need to on-off ramp any fiat. They do not need to swap any tokens. All of that gets set up for them automatically. So no direct interaction with the technology is necessary. Now a user has two epic limbs of some type of some sorts. They don't want one of them. They see, oh, there's a peer-to-peer marketplace. Not important side note, we don't have a company store. We're literally one of the only games out there in Web2 that does not have a company store, that just has a peer-to-peer marketplace. Very, very unique. So the only way to obtain an item is either to find it within a gaming session and extract it through our extraction process, or to purchase it from someone else that extracted it from the island and then listed it on the marketplace. There's no company store. So now you're at a point where you played your game, you have a couple items, you're like, oh, I want to sell an item. Great. You now list the item on the internal marketplace. It's totally seamless experience, right? Built right into the PlayStation or Xbox experience is our marketplace. So you go to the marketplace, as long as you have OTG Pro, a subscription, a battle pass, you are allowed to list the item on the marketplace and sell the item. Okay, great. So now you bought something else that you're interested in, and you can do that, indefinitely. But then eventually people will be like, oh, what's this, cash out button? What does this do? That's when we can start getting into the educational aspect of, well, if you want to actually take complete custody of the item, here's how you set up a wallet. If you want to sell this for actual dollars on OpenSea, this is how you set up a wallet. This is how you take custody of the item. This is how you connect your wallet to OpenSea. This is how you sell. This is how you cash out, etc. Of course, we are natively, our GUNZ chain is natively integrated to OpenSea. In the future, we'll be integrating to more third-party marketplaces. But that's the point at which a person can choose to start directly interacting with this technology if this is of interest to them. So we believe that keeping this completely optional, keeping the direct interaction completely optional, is what eventually will make people comfortable with this technology. The problem before has been that people were forced to instantly and immediately interact with technology that is foreign, that has gotten a very, very bad rep, and that people simply do not want to be forced to interact with because they're used to a very, very specific set of parameters that they're interacting with when they're consuming entertainment. So you can't just change it all up on them, right? But making it optional somewhere on the side where eventually they go like, oh, well, this is kind of cool, right? This was free to download, free to try. I have my battle pass. I have all these items. I got this inventory stuff. I trade out on the marketplace. These seem to be good guys. Let me try this other thing. So that's how we approach that, right? Make it completely optional, but do provide them the tools that they need and the education that they need to allow them to engage with the additional, in our opinion, very powerful features of blockchain technology.
That's excellent. How do you actually go about the education side of things? Is it part of the gameplay in some way, or is it you send them to a website? How do you do that?
Well, we haven't launched mainnet yet, so some of these things will, of course, be made a lot clearer once we launch mainnet. But as you've seen from our past, kind of level of quality on our videos and our short films and the game itself, we have some very, very interesting ideas on how to make this very, very approachable and digestible and easy to understand for users. We're also still innovating on our own wallet and making sure that we can give people a much easier experience than what the usual current, Web3 onboarding experience looks like.
Oh, that's great. That's really cool. So we were talking about how we're going to bring, a billion new users into Web3 gaming, right? And you did a good job of explaining where you guys are at. So what are you doing outside of the crypto world? Are you advertising the game out in the real world somewhere? Do you have like a mass marketing campaign, kind of like a Fortnite would, or what are you guys doing exactly there?
We have a lot of things on that front. We absolutely are marketing to traditional gamers. We are marketing to Web3 gamers. We have now localizations that we've made. We just launched the game in Japanese native language, both for the audio as well as our UI. We just did Portuguese, Spanish,
Wow.
and German. We have a lot of other localizations coming. The conversion rate and the retention rate grew by over 50% doing those localizations. Internally, actually, one of the founders said, Vlad said that, hey, this is not actually not a feature request internally, but a critical bug item, given how massively it increased conversion rates. So I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, there's a lot of traditional marketing happening. Some people see our ads, short clips on TikTok and on Instagram. We of course have our streamer campaigns that we've been doing. We did our monthly content drops, which included back in October, Ninja, a very famous battle
Yeah.
royale streamer. We were the first company ever to use Scump, a skin, which actually started trending on X, which was really, really cool to see because people were like, oh my God, Call of Duty snubbed him, and here, a new up and coming cool game is coming out with a Scump skin. So we're doing a lot of things, right, to engage with the community, to create, relevant, sometimes parody and commentary on current occurrences, like you saw with the Save Democracy pack in November. And so there's a lot of different angles that we're taking to make sure that we continue, getting people exposed to and informed about the fact that there is actually an incredibly entertaining and very, very unique and very, very different battle royale experience in the gaming sector.
Very cool.
Are you able to share any stats on how many traditional gamers like Xbox, PlayStation versus Web3 crypto based gamers there are?
So not quite, and we'll run through more formal stats over time in our own dashboards, but we have over half, I would say roughly over half of the 13 million wallets right now that we have signed up are traditional gamers that even in our own Discord are like, I don't even care about the crypto components. This is like the funnest battle royale game I've ever played. And I'm glad that am able to trade my items, etc. But I don't like people are like, oh, what do you think about this token? And the mainnet still hasn't launched yet. Like, I don't care about any of that stuff. It's an awesome game. So it is actually really cool to see those two worlds kind of colliding and merging when you have some very, very crypto native and blockchain native folks in our Discord, talking with people that never touched Web3 before that is like, I'm just here to play an awesome game. It's really funny to see sometimes these interactions and they're like, how can you not care about this? They're like, I don't. It's really cool.
That's great.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go look those discords. I'm like, can I get your skin for like $5?
Yeah, right.
That epic rare one.
Seriously.
I'll buy you a cold drink. So you mentioned that there was roughly about 13 million users. Is that right?
So it's 13 million wallets that could mean multiple different things because we also have a mobile game called a mobile companion game called Technocore. We have also
Okay.
our own wallet product. And here it's probably worth mentioning that we're one of the very, very few Web3 projects that has built everything out first before ever launching mainnet. And that includes not only our flagship title Off the Grid, but it includes also the mobile companion game Technocore. It includes our mobile companion app with insane kind of details on all your stats, gamer matching engine, chat, a little timeline you can post to, all fully built out as well. It includes, of course, our blockchain scan. It includes our NFT marketplace. It includes our NFT minting engine. And of course, everything runs on top of our own kind of Avalanche L1 blockchain called GUNZ. So all these things already are built out. There's multiple different touch points where a user could enter and basically generate a wallet. Coming back full circle to your question, the 13 million wallets could have several different touch points, but of course, the majority of them are absolutely from off the grid. And the majority of them were generated since October 8th of 2024, when we launched our early access. We're at roughly 2.8 million wallets prior to the launch, and now we're at over 13 million wallets. In terms of other stats, we're at over 340 million transactions in total. We're averaging roughly
Sure.
2.5 million transactions per day, which is obviously a massive, massive number. And we are only getting started, right? There's a lot of different aspects of the game that are still to come out. The full Battle Royale mode is still coming. Large chunks of the island that are currently engulfed in mist are being opened up. And of course, our monthly content packs, our monthly battle passes, there's a huge, huge roadmap already of content in the pipeline.
Awesome.
I'm just super excited. All right, so I took you off on a tangent there. I'll come back to a few more questions that I have later on, but let's just get back to the whole the trust issues of Web3. All right, so obviously we're a crypto channel, so we got to talk about these things. So we kind of putting our crypto hats on, and we know there are some pain points, scams and potential cash grabs, and that how do you protect the user? How's your security system? You use the word seamless, all right, but there's a lot of things that happen in the background, big bounces to make sure that it's seamless but safe, all right, and people don't get
Sure.
scammed quite easily.
Well, first and foremost, let's get a little bit into the details of what we have in terms of a team.
Mm-hmm.
We have currently over 400 full-time employees.
Sure.
So it's a
Wow.
massive, massive team. The blockchain team itself is bigger than most complete teams out there in this industry. That's one. Two, the team that is working on this previously to this built a game that had over 150 million gamers playing it. A traditional Web 2 game, right? Nothing to do with Web 3. So we have a team that's incredibly, incredibly experienced in building very, very large scale kind of gaming experiences. One of our co-founders is actually Neil Blomkamp, who's the film director behind District 9, Chappie, and Elysium with Matt Damon. So my point just being that this is a very, very different type of a team in terms of its experience in gaming. We have decades of experience in gaming, including the core team that built a previous project that was very large scale and very successful. So that's the expertise that is being brought to the blockchain side as well, right? Everything is done to a very, very high standard. Nothing is being kind of left to chance. Nothing is being put on a roadmap where we're like, oh, after we launch, eventually, in a couple of years, we'll get around to doing X, Y, and Z. It's really all being built right now. It has been the chain itself, for example, and the wallet and everything else has been in testnet for over a year already, right? Being utilized by all these, now 13 million wallets. So there's an incredible amount of development that has already taken place, an incredible amount of testing that already has taken place. Of course, we've multiple audits that we passed and everything else. So we take this extremely, extremely seriously, as is reflected by the scale and size of our team.
Wow, yeah, that's great. So getting back to off the grid specifically, the big battle royale, what makes off the grid different, from any other shooter that's out there?
So great, great question. I'm very, very glad that you asked because we actually have several very, very unique aspects that we in totality call the Battle Royale 2.0 experience. And what those are is number one, we're the first ever Battle Royale game in the history of Battle Royale games that has 60 hours of storyline on both sides of the conflict. Currently, from my own experience as well as a gamer, one of the biggest complaints that I have as a shooter player, of why I don't really enjoy the battle royale experience as much is because there is no storyline. When we used to play with my boys Fortnite, one of the items to progress on your battle pass was jump 10 times off of a waterfall. Even the first two times were boring, but I would never finish my battle pass because nonsense like that was on there. My kids would always, oh no, come on, Dad, you can do it. I'm like, I don't want to. I know I can. So we have 60 hours of storyline on both sides of the conflict, and a trailer about a year and a half ago that we released with some streamers playing it showed actually how one team, right within the battle royale experience, one team was tasked or took on the task of extracting an asset to safety, while another team was on the other side of the conflict tasked with preventing this asset to be extracted and preventing that asset from reaching its destination. And that's just a fairly small part of the storyline, but there's 60 hours of storyline on both sides of the conflict, written by none other than Richard Morgan, the author of Altered Carbon, which was later on turned into an award-winning Netflix show. He also wrote some of the Assassin's Creed storylines and a bunch of other really, really cool stuff. But that's an incredibly unique aspect. Like nobody else has that. Nobody else has ever done anything like that before. So that's one. Two, of course, the very, very obvious, in your face one is that we allow people to own their own assets, right? There is no other Web2 game that has the ability to do that and that is as seamlessly integrated into the game on top of that, right? There's very, very different, very difficult ways to kind of exchange assets, trade assets, etc. sell Fortnite accounts on eBay, but nobody really has tackled this successfully in allowing people to own all of their own assets. And last but definitely not least, we have this almost virtually unlimited series of strategic decision making that a person can make during their gaming session as a result of this very unique approach that the team came up with of these cyber limbs, we call them, right? People have cyber limbs for their arms, people have cyber legs. You land with your standard limbs that can't do anything, but then as you progress through your gaming session, you can find legs that make you run really fast. You can find legs that make you jump really high. You can find an arm that has an energy shield, reflects bullets back at your opponent, or a grappling hook, or a grenade launcher, or an invisibility tool, etc. It gives you virtually unlimited strategic decision choices compared to other games where either the variety exists only in terms of weapons, or at the most you can lock into a specific ability, at the beginning of the game, but then you have to carry that ability throughout your whole gaming session. And that cyberlimb model lends itself also to very, very entertaining moments of you shooting somebody's legs off. That person is kind of crawling away on their arms, you running over and stealing their legs because you like their legs better than your legs. I mean, endless humorous entertainment. People clipping this Tinder Tatman, a famous streamer, didn't realize that there was fall damage. She's just jumping off of a tall building, landing there, has no legs. So like, what the hell is going on? Crawling around. It's really, really fun. And not that I'm obviously a perfect example of our target audience in terms of, being in my 40s and having kids and, having a busy lifestyle. But I found myself going back and playing battle royale games again because it's such a fun time. And we have some people, and it warms my heart when I read these comments. But we have some people that posted on X. I have 10,000 hours into Apex. I just deleted it because I found my new battle royale game. Or some other person wrote, I haven't had in 10 years such warm and entertaining experiences as I've had over the last couple of days with Off the Grid. Heartwarming to read that. And again, from my own personal experience, that's exactly how I feel. For example, we have a Cyberlimb right now, which is somewhat controversial because people keep complaining that it's overpowered and that they don't like dying to it. And I occasionally jump into the chat on our Discord and I write, I love dying to that thing. I know it sounds absurd, but I love the animations. I love the visuals. It's just incredible. So it's just a very, very different experience and a very kind of emotionally, positively charged experience that I myself find myself having with the game.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I've played around a little bit and it's been absolutely super fun. My kids destroy me at it. I have no
Of
I
course.
have no ability to to
Yeah.
actually play, but it is a lot of fun.
Theo, you mentioned you built out the story. I know we're waiting a long time for
Yep.
Gunzilla, but you guys have built it out, and you've got basically an all-star, unique team, right?
hmm
How do you retain these all-stars within the narrative? Because obviously you had to launch, and then you had to get followers, and you had to get gamers, and then like now when it's starting to get traction, you got to keep these guys on, and so what makes you? How do you retain these guys to build that next narrative to keep that whole specialness about Gunzilla?
And just a clarification question, you mean our internal team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, your
So
all-star guys that are creating the narrative, that are building the storylines, that are creating the visuals, and that they like, for instance, if we're talking about a movie, like let's say Matt Damon, right? You only have him for one episode. Maybe there's a sequel, right? But you have to retain him, and not just him. You probably have to retain a few other assets as well. So because you guys have got a rock star like internal team, how do you retain them for a longer period of time? Because games take forever to build.
well, number one, we're already pretty good on the retention in that it took us so far 5 years to get to where we're at. That's one. But number two, there is such a rich universe that we already are immersed in right internally that obviously externally folks haven't seen yet. People are over the moon excited to bring that whole universe to fruition, right? To share this whole universe with folks. And we already have internally like season one, two, three, four, and beyond, right? Mapped out in terms of the storyline and the lore and the content and what all these other parts of the island look like. We haven't released it yet, right? But internally, we already know what all of this looks like. So the team is super excited to bring all of that to fruition and share it with our community, our ever-growing community of gamers out there. So yeah, so far, like I said, it's been 5 years, and we've only expanded the team, and everybody's super jazzed to see this all come to life.
Very cool.
Amazing. So, all right, let's talk about scalability. One of Web3 gaming's biggest headaches is high gas fees and slow transactions. How is Gunzilla making sure players don't have to take a crypto loan out just to buy a digital sword or a limb or something here?
Well, that's exactly why we decided to build our own blockchain. And it's worth mentioning here, we built our blockchain on top of an Avalanche subnet.
Okay.
And back when we were looking at, how do we solve these technological problems to make it easy for the user, we very, very quickly realized that the only way to make that happen is to have our own token so that we can basically subsidize gas, take care of everything transparently in the background, etc. We tested a number of different solutions out there. That was years ago now. And the only solution that actually worked and allowed us to use our own token for gas was Avalanche and their subnets. So over the last couple of years, all of that was built out as an Avalanche kind of L1, they call them, the GUNZ chain. And Avalanche has been nothing but phenomenal in their technical support, in their marketing support. So that's how we accomplished that, right? We have our own chain, we have our own token, and we can do everything as a result of that transparently in the background. The user never has to interact with the token or pay gas, or like you said, take out a loan just to buy an item. All of that is taken care of for them, and we can control the process completely from A to Z. And as a result of that, make it very seamless and very, very easy to use and interactive.
Awesome.
Theo, tell me about a little bit about the game design. So you said took 5 years to get to market, right? So when you build 5 years, let's say you're in year one, you have this idea, you got your vision, you start building, right? The time you get to year five, like 5 years in crypto is a lifetime. The technology has changed rapidly. So how do you build in almost like Roblox and then come out with this beautiful product and then like is that beautiful product is the latest technologies? Do you have to redo it every year? Like what is the secret sauce in 5 years of gaming? Because it's crazy.
Well, great question, actually. So we have some extremely passionate and extremely talented developers that, of course, are constantly staying on the forefront of what the current, best practices are, what the
Yeah.
best technologies are out there. We constantly are in R&D mode in parallel to development mode as well. So we keep our finger on the pulse of technology, and we're like, oh, wow, like let's research, what AI is doing right now. Let's research AI agents. Like we constantly already ideating on things that are right now leading edge that didn't even exist, 3, 4, let alone 5 years ago, and always at the ready to kind of implement some of that into our existing workflow, into our existing roadmap. That's really how we've stayed so far, very, very much on the leading edge and very kind of fresh with regards
Okay.
to what not only best practices are, but also what the best technologies are to solve some of these problems that we're solving.
Very cool.
So another big issue is interoperability. Right now, Web3 gaming is very fragmented. Each game has its own ecosystem. Now, do you think we'll see a future where players can maybe move assets across different games and things like that?
So it's always very fun to answer that question because um, it's ultimately just a very cute party trick, right? Just because, I always say just because the technology is able to do something doesn't mean that it makes any sense to do it. So, for example, imagine you have a Harry Potter magic wand that you can take into Grand Theft Auto. You're
Right.
like, it makes no, right? So, the technology can do a lot of cool things, but it doesn't make sense really to do it because the lore has to really kind of mesh the style of graphics, the style of play, all really has to mesh and make sense. I think that that isn't necessarily what really is a good use of the technology. What is a good use of the technology is to allow people to maybe use that specific asset as a key for maybe a secret level within another game that you collaborate with. So you have off the grid, and then you go into some other game that has nothing to do with off the grid, but you have like a secret level that's kind of branded a little bit like off the grid, and that item that you have now converts to their style. So you basically create two items in two different worlds. So there are some really, really cool kind of collabs that you can do. And of course, as you build out like a second season or even a totally separate kind of sister game, like we have Technicore for the mobile game and Off the Grid for our main kind of flagship flagship product, you could at that point when a user logs in with that item, give them a totally separate item, but it kind of has still some of the resemblance of the original item that they had. So there's definitely a lot of cool things that you can do, but the actual real like take this item and use it here makes no sense at all.
Yeah, right. I agree. But in your own gaming world, in the Gunzilla world, it could be possible in the future to, maybe it's another off the grid type
Absolutely.
game, right? And
Yep.
you can move over to that game with it and keep
For
your
sure. Yeah,
yeah.
if you have a base inventory, I would even take it a step further. I see a future where as you build up a character to level whatever it is, as you get a certain base inventory, as you get certain base accomplishments, that should get you a different level of access to some other game or some other, second version of a game than if you just entered the game and just started. It'll make you feel also, it will feel also a lot more rewarding to start at a different level in a second game because of years of effort that you've put into the first game. For me, that'd
Yeah.
be really, really cool. So I kind of liked grinding with my daughter in Diablo 4, but at the same time, I was like, oh, not again. After Diablo 3, you're like, oh, come on. I'm again a nobody, like from scratch again. Okay, keep farming, keep grinding. So if I could have taken at least some of my inventory and some of my skills and skill tree and it translated at least into some benefits in Diablo 4, I'd be definitely a lot more excited to instantly jump in and have it as a continuation as opposed to a totally new from scratch cold start experience.
Yeah, I mean that's super cool. So I mean you own the inventory, you own all this stuff
Yep,
anyway, right? So
exactly.
if Off the Grid 2 comes out and
Yep.
you get to start as an OG in Off the Grid 2 with all your equipment, that would be absolutely incredible.
Yeah, or arguably even let's say there's some racing game that
Right.
happens within that same universe, and you at least take the cyber limbs with you or the clothing with you that you can now use in the race. That is just cool, right? It gives you
Yeah.
this very cool experience of feeling very familiar with the environment because you took some of what you created yourself into the new environment. So it has a nice continuation.
Oh, that's great.
I think from a partnership point of view, I think there's that'll allow games to start talking to each other and do some probably collabs together.
Hmm.
But at the same time, if I was an up and coming gaming company, which I've no I have no patience to do, but if I was and I wanted to attract those 13 million or 150 million users, I'm going to say, well, guys, you get access to this level. All right, just bring your assets across. So I'm actually pulling another community into my game, so it's a marketing tool. That could be the next the next marketing stunt that people do to attract new users to the platform.
For
Very
sure. You
interesting.
could for example say, oh, anyone we have a very popular player zero skin, we call it. It's all the original pioneers that tested the game on the in the Pioneer program for a number of months before we launched early access, have a very unique skin. Yeah, any other project come along and say, hey, anyone that has a player zero skin, we're going to give all these extra benefits to because they're like OGs and off the grid and they've been playing for over a year, etc. And people can, of course, take custody of their own items into their own wallet so they can connect a wallet and verify that they actually have the player zero gear. So it becomes very, very interesting of what you can do in terms of marketing to specific audiences or giving specific audiences a very specific benefit in some totally unrelated project, even if it has nothing to do with Gunzilla or the GUNZ ecosystem specifically. So yeah, I think I'm super, super excited about that type of interoperable future.
Absolutely.
What's happening in the next 5 years from now? So they've taken 5 years to launch, getting going, 13 million wallets, and climbing. So where do you see Gunzilla going? If you can just script that or tell us what's actually happening or what could unfold in the next couple of years. But at the same time, if you had this crystal ball to say where you want to go with Gunzilla, where would that be in the next five?
Also, there's two specific trajectories. One is very specific to the flagship product off the grid, where our goal is, of course, to onboard over 100 million gamers and do that with, a live services game that gets new updates every month, new content packs, new battle passes, more of storylines, and all of the kind of island and the storyline kind of expanding on an ongoing basis. But then we have also our GUNZ ecosystem, where all the tools that we built for off the grid that have this very, very user-friendly and very engaging approach to onboarding users in a very easy way to, in essence, Web3 or blockchain-enabled products, we will allow other Web2, or for that matter, also good Web3 gaming studios to white label. So we will be expanding the ecosystem with a lot of other third-party IP in the future, possibly also some additional first-party IP, and that ecosystem, is growing right now already into the kind of de facto only AAA gaming blockchain ecosystem in the world. So those are the two kind of separate pathways that we're taking, one with the ecosystem, one with our flagship product.
Okay.
Excellent. So Gunzilla is powered by your own layer one that you've built on the AVAX blockchain, correct?
Correct. And that's
And with
GUNZ.
on GUNZ.
Yep.
And within that, you've got a series of nodes. How does that integrate into the game, and what exactly are you doing with that?
Sure, great question. So we have two separate types of nodes, right? We obviously have our blockchain validator nodes that validate all the transactions on the chain on our own, Avalanche-based L1 called GUNZ. And then, yes, we are the company that in 2021 invented software nodes. There's a lot of people that copied us since. They haven't really copied the sustainable economies, but just the concept itself. But the concept is that we have 10,000 Gunzilla validator nodes that mint every single in-game item that players receive in off the grid. And the player pays the validator node a decoding fee directly for the decoding process and for the minting process. And these nodes will also be upgradable because they will be able to mint in-game items for other GUNZ ecosystem projects as well. So there's 10,000 of them, and they take care of all of the minting. There is no other way to get an item minted in off the grid. It has to go through one of the 10,000 validated nodes.
So
Okay, and I'm sorry. So it's not just off the grid. You're talking about future gaming. All of that is all going to come back to the nodes.
Absolutely. And on that note, it is important to mention what separates us also from a lot of other, or most other really Web3 projects, is we do not have a treasury that releases rewards and inflates and dilutes supply and creates, of course, long-term economy problems. All of the rewards within our ecosystem are based on actual economic activity. So the user that has a battle pass that pays for the battle pass is the user then takes a portion of that, has tokens, and then pays the decoding fees directly to the validator, and so on and so forth. So it's a really sustainable and enclosed ecosystem.
Amazing.
So those 10,000 nodes, are they active at the moment, or when will they play a part in the Gunzilla?
So currently, like I said, the only way to mint an in-game item is to go through a validator node. So they all are absolutely already active. It's just that those are testnet nodes and not mainnet nodes yet. Just like the token currently is a testnet token, not a mainnet token. So all of those things will be burned when we switch over to mainnet.
Amazing. So give us your wildest prediction. We're sitting here in 2030. What does the absolute ultimate blockchain powered game look like then?
Well, I'll first talk about my general thesis of what I think should happen and needs to happen and what I think will happen, and then we can kind of go and focus on the gaming portion of that vision. Number one, I believe that all of these different technology names and different blockchains and different rollups and layer twos and all that stuff, nobody will be talking about in another decade. People will simply want to have like their iPhone, right? Open an app, consume entertainment, get the financial tasks done, close the app, and move on. Nobody will ever in 10 years talk about what specific technology is, except for the actual developers working on that technology. So that's number one. But number two, I see a future where depending on what your access point is into an ecosystem, and obviously it goes without saying that all ecosystems will have some form of blockchain-based technology kind of powering it, but no matter what your access point is, that token that you enter your kind of journey with is the token that you'll be able to use anywhere. Similarly to like right now, if I come from the US with a US dollar and I travel to Europe, I see a future where I can then use that US dollar anywhere, in any store, in any experience that I'm purchasing, I use the US dollar. And blockchain technology will abstract it away to a point where all of the conversion and all of the translation will happen on the back end. So you'll have all these users who are entering through different touch points with different tokens in essence, that they can then use anywhere they go, with any game, with any financial product. And again, all of the translation will happen automatically. Yes, there might be a little bit of a worse conversion rate, similarly to if you use a certain credit card, you might pay a little whatever, a 1.5% penalty. But if you use a Apple Card, there are no foreign transaction fees, and you have some nuances like that. But for the most part, it will be all about the user. So whatever makes sense for the user is what the technology is going to support. Now, bringing it back to gaming, if you enter, the GUNZ ecosystem, any single game out there, even if it has its own token on the GUNZ chain, you'll be able to play with the GUN token if you first entered through the off-the-grid experience. And then furthermore, if there's any partnerships with a game on a totally different ecosystem, you will still be able to take those GUN tokens and use them in other games automatically, and all those conversions are going to get done on the background automatically. So that's the future. I see the complete interoperability, completely seamless to the user, make it all just about the user experience and nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Theo, this has been an off-the-grid conversation. Nice play on over there. We've covered Web3 gaming, some of the biggest challenges, Gunzilla's approach, the future of gaming. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge and your expertise and your vision. If people want to get to know more about Gunzilla and OTG, where should they go?
Thanks so much for asking. So number one, we encourage people to follow us on X at @PlayOffTheGrid, because that's where we post all of our latest updates. If people want to interact with community members, they'll be able to do so in the Off the Grid Discord server. And of course, to download the game and experience it, like as they say, the proof is in the pudding, go to playoffthegrid.com, where we'll link to all of the different versions of the game and just kind of load into Teardrop Island and check it out for yourself.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to put you on the spot for just a second. You said you guys are not quite at mainnet yet. Any thoughts? Can you give our audience an idea of when that may happen?
Sure. So currently what we're saying is Q1. So we're very, very close.
All right. That is very close, because
You heard
we're
that,
almost
guys.
halfway through Q1, guys.
Tuesday they're launching.
Q1. I said Q1.
Q1. Sorry. Lost
Yeah,
the
Sean
translation.
says Tuesday.
You're breaking up there, Theo.
That's right. Web 2 going to Web 3 and back to Web 2.
That's right.
There we go.
All right, guys, go check out Gunzilla Games and Off the Grid. Whether you're a Web3 degen or just a hardcore gamer, this is one project you definitely want to watch. And it's been a lot of fun, Theo. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see y'all on the next episode of Dad's Gone Crypto.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Bye.
The material and information presented in this recording are for entertainment purposes only. Do not misconstrue what you hear as investment or trading advice. Always do your own research. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by the guests on this recording are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of Dad's Gone Crypto or its hosts.